So we'll go ahead and get started. We've got quite a few people on. Thanks for joining Supper with Sean tonight, and I'm honored to have Dr. Robb Fraley with us tonight. Robb, thanks for joining us.
Sean, I tell you, I cannot believe you talked me into doing this. If there's one thing I hate to do, it's talk about myself. So
really?
You're going to have to pry this out of me.
Sure. Well, I'll do my best.
Right.
I'll do
Sounds
my best.
Good.
And
that's fair.
So as we think, on Supper with Sean, we like to talk about leadership and challenging change. And you certainly have done just that through your experience here at Monsanto over the years. Tell us a little bit about when you came to Monsanto as a scientist. At that time, Monsanto was a chemistry company. What was that experience like? How did you challenge change in your leadership role there?
Well, it was a great time, an exciting time. I joined in February of 1980.
Okay.
At that point in time, there were a lot of things going on in the company. The chemical industry was, we were an industrial chemical company. And,
right.
Back then, Monsanto owned oil wells, and
okay.
We manufactured just about everything you could do
right.
out of petroleum. So
and even carpet fibers at that time, right?
For a long time, we were best known to the consumer for wear-dated carpet, for that little green layer that was in the windshield.
Yeah.
That's a little piece of plastic in between glass.
Okay.
And then, we got undue attention for inventing AstroTurf.
Yeah.
So that was who we are. But I think to the credit of the leadership of the company back then, two things. First of all, they realized that there was life beyond chemistry, and so there was a strong interest in looking for new growth platforms. And then, particularly, I credit one of my mentors, Ernie Jaworski, who had been involved with biotech and made some bold decisions. And
right.
When I joined Monsanto, there were about 3 of us who were working in the biotech area, and so you can imagine being in biotech in a chemical company, and then of course, the first plants we worked on were petunias, so
right.
that made it even funnier for folks. But
yeah,
for us, I think we were really excited about the mission. The biotechnology science was just breaking back then.
Yes.
If you think about back in the 1980s, the first recombinant DNA experiments had been just done a few years before. We were starting to see already the applications right. that biotechnology could have in healthcare.
Right.
And so, there was a real excitement about what can we do in agriculture? Can we even use this technology? So, we had a really focused, really energized team. And, fortunately, the team melded, worked together. And,
right.
Within a couple of years, we'd made some key breakthroughs, like being able to get that first gene in a plant,
yeah.
even though it was a petunia plant.
Yeah.
And we could start to paint the path for how you could get to Roundup tolerant plants and make corn and soybean immune to Roundup, and
yeah. how
we can introduce genes into plants that could help them protect themselves against insects. So,
right.
I always think that being able to tell a story with a vision and a way to get there is the key. And we had a lot of challenges. Our first field tests were kind of a flop.
Yeah.
There was always someone who thought that, R&D dollars spent on, some of this biotech stuff would be better spent in another area. And,
right.
We had our share of those challenges.
Yeah.
But, one of the things I've learned is success goes a long way.
It does. And so when you experienced failure, though, you talk about those flops. How do you kind of maintain your attitude and some comments here? It's never easy, right? So it takes a resilience. And you try to force change or push change. How do you kind of refocus, gain the scope, not lose sight of that challenge? What is that how do you handle defeat?
Well, there's first of all, I hate to lose, so defeat is something I don't like. But actually, there's only one thing that is worse than being defeated, and that's not trying.
Right.
And so I think that for me personally, when I look back on my career, and boy, I've messed up on a lot of projects and a lot of decisions, and fortunately we've had some ones that have really worked well. But when I look back, on a career now that's pushing 37, 38 years,
Mm-hmm.
the things that I regret the most are where I didn't push hard enough and we didn't
Okay.
do the things that we probably could have or should have if I'd pushed more. So, for me, defeat, as scientists, most of the time things don't go well. So
Right.
you kind of build that in, and then the key thing I think is being honest with yourself. Are you still on a path that can get you there? And
Okay.
I kind of go back to the history of GMOs. So in 1980 we started the group. Had a lot of challenges because back then no one knew how to put a new gene into a plant. They
Right.
didn't know whether that gene would work or whether you could put it into a plant cell and get a
Yeah.
whole plant back, or
Yep.
whether that gene would pass through the seed and be useful commercially. So there were a lot of unknowns, and the fact that we had a great team, I think, helped a lot.
Yeah.
And because it's one of the beauties was being able to bring all that expertise together. So we had the right magic person, Rob Horsch, who was doing the tissue culture,
Okay.
the right gene wizard, Steve
Yeah.
Rogers. I focused on how do you get genes in, and so good teamwork was key.
Yeah.
And then I think also realizing that this thing was worth it.
Yeah.
If every time we had a failure, we kept reminding ourselves that, boy, if we could really make a soybean plant resistant to glyphosate, it could change farming. It would bring enormous economic and environmental benefits. If we could get that Bt gene to work to control
Right.
insects, it would give farmers an important new tool, and it could really help reduce insecticides and
Yeah.
other products. So we were highly motivated,
Yeah.
and fortunately we had enough success along the way that even though it took us from 1980 to 1996 to
Yeah.
launch those first biotech
Right.
products, we had a whole series of successes and milestones along the way.
Absolutely. And as you think about that long tenure, really, of trial, failure, defeat, trying again, as you think about your experiences through Monsanto and seeing a lot of change within the company over your years of service here, how do you think, what's your driving force, your motivation, not only back then, but how do you continue to strive for that success? What is it that you fail, you think, golly, nobody else believes in this change, nobody sees what I see.
Yeah.
How do you really explain that motivation, and then how do you keep that motivation?
Well, let me answer it a couple of different ways, because
Okay.
depending on what day it is, I might have a different answer
Different
for
answer.
that one. But
That's fair.
But fundamentally, I always say there's two things that motivate you. On the one hand, there's excitement. On the other hand, there's terror.
Yeah.
And somewhere in that bandwidth is where you want to be. So we always had the the excitement of doing something new, creating a product and a set of products that had incredible benefit for farmers around the world, and
Right.
then the terror of, gosh, what if somebody else did it? What if what
Yeah.
if something else happened? And so I think that was a great motivator for us, and still is today. And then I think a little bit more when you think about it from an organizational sense and from a leadership sense in particular, being able to make that goal exciting, be able to make it compelling to drive and align an organization. A key to that is being able to lay out enough of a path, enough of a backup path,
Right.
that people feel comfortable taking risks to do something new for the first time.
Yeah.
And in so many cases, I think being able to provide that kind of clarity is the key. Because I always make the point, when you talk about leadership, you have to have followers.
Yeah.
And
That's pretty important,
And
right?
in a science organization, they have to be excited, they have to be motivated, and they have to believe that they're on the right path.
Sure.
And that's key. And
Yeah.
I think the company has done a good job of that. Because you talked about one transition, which is when I joined, we were an industrial chemical company,
Right.
and as we were able to develop the biotechnology tools and traits, by the early 90s, we were transitioning to be a biotech company.
Right.
And then what's interesting is we realized that as the biotechnology tools were being developed, and I don't mean just the GMO traits like the Roundup Ready or the BT, but the molecular breeding, and it was clear that these tools were going to have a huge impact on crop breeding. The company transitioned once again from being, a biotech company to becoming a seed company.
Right.
And that really redefined the company. And as you know, because you're personally involved with it, the last 3 or 4 years, we've made a bold, set of acquisitions and deals to get us into the digital world. And I could see, and I talk about it often, that I could see in a few years Monsanto, transitioning to become a digital ag company.
Right.
And so I think that's pretty neat. When you look over the course of of 30 or 40 years to watch a company transform itself. And when you read all those business books, companies are always trying to transform themselves, and it's hard to do.
It's very hard to do.
To see the path we've gone on, I think, is really a key to our culture. That we can take those risks, that we can move forward, and in many cases, I'd kind of describe how it works now is, I think people realize that, and I think this is really important, you always take a certain amount of risk when you're changing.
Right.
But I think what our organization realizes is there's probably even greater risk not to change.
Yeah.
And that's really an important, I think, part of our culture.
Sure. And I think, too, it's important as we think about the people watching, too, as leadership. And I think you could really use that very same analogy for us as people, as employees, as people involved in volunteering and organization and promoting agriculture. It's important that we change too, right? That even as a company like Monsanto pivots and turns, we have to be willing to accept change as employees, as organizations, volunteer, promoting agriculture. That's vitally important too, I think.
Yeah, and I'd say a couple of things that are very different that I see now than when I joined the workforce back in 1980. So, first of all, the technology is changing even more rapidly.
Right.
So, an employee who joins a company today, I always tell them, look, you're going to be changing jobs and roles every 3 years. You're going to be, working in the business side. You're going to be transitioning from biology to data science to plant breeding, and those are all important because the skills and tools are changing really very dramatically. And I think another thing that I see, in today's workforce that I think is even more intense is I see a lot of the new employees who join us really care passionately about the impact of their work.
Right.
And I can't imagine, that's an easy, for me to identify. Having, grown up on a farm, being interested in science all my life. This is such an important time for agriculture because when you look at the challenge ahead, we have a world where population continues to grow.
Right.
By 2050, there will be 10 billion people, and world wealth's increasing, and the demand for better, nutrition and diets will enhance, and that means that farmers around the world have to basically double the food supply in the next 33 years, and that's a huge technology challenge, and it's important that we do it the right way because we could easily say, okay, let's freeze technology, just let's plow up twice as much land around the world, but we would destroy the environment along the way. So being able to do this the right way, being able to do it smartly with innovation is key. And that kind of gets me to the last point, which is, been a pretty painful lesson for our company and for me personally is, when we first launched the biotech traits, the Roundup Ready soybeans and the GMO crops, hard to believe, but that was 20 years ago. Over 20 years ago. We did our research, our testing, we got our regulatory approvals, and once we got the approvals, we did like most companies did back then. We started talking to our customers and selling the products, and the part that we missed was bringing society and consumers along with it. And so we suffered a pretty hefty price for that.
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 years ago, we got much more active on
Right.
social media and having the dialogue with consumers. And clearly we've got a lot of ground to catch up on. But I think the lesson I've learned, and I think it's not just in ag biotech, because
Right.
I can look over at the healthcare world and realize that there's consumers out there that today aren't vaccinating their kids. And
Right.
suddenly we've got measles epidemics and things like that. I think I'd say the broader picture here is the advancements in science.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at what's now possible with biotechnology and the new advanced
Right.
tools like gene editing and digital ag, is what science can do
Mm-hmm.
is really amazing. But we've not done a good job of bringing the society and the consumer
Mm-hmm.
up to that level of understanding and appreciation of the importance. So it's easy to scare them with stuff. And so
Right.
we need to do a better job of communicating. If any of you follow me on Twitter, you know that I've been very active on Twitter and HuffPo and writing articles. And, you can always follow me at
Yeah.
Robb Fraley, RobbFraley. And to this last point on leadership and today's employee, I think as scientists, and particularly scientists involved in agriculture, because less than 1% of the population in
Right.
the U.S. is involved in agriculture and farming, we have the responsibility and the obligation to reach out to that other 99% and talk to them about why this is important, why
Mhm.
there's a benefit, the address the safety, the concerns, and the emotions
Right.
that people have. And that's something we just, we've learned painfully we needed to do a much better job on. But I think every scientist has that obligation. In fact, I'd be this blunt about it, that we continue and have to have great science to create products, but we also have to be great communicators.
Right.
So that the public,
Mhm.
the policymakers make the right decisions for the right reasons.
Right. Yeah. So you have been at this a long time. You've
Don't-
seen
don't
a lot
say
of,
that. Don't say that.
Well, I won't tell you when I was born. As you think about all of your experiences, and certainly you're as passionate as anybody that I've met about telling the story about agriculture and science, and you kind of alluded to why it is that we need to do that. But why is it that you, maybe just in the last couple minutes here, why is it that you became a scientist, and why is it that you still do what you do?
God, I tell you, those trigger moments in life are a key, and
Yeah.
it's probably longer than you want to hear and I want to talk about. Let me just say a couple things that, as I look back, have been hugely impactful for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, first thing, I grew up on a farm,
Right.
a small farm, 100 miles south of Chicago in central Illinois. And it's different when when you grow up on a farm and you see crops and you see animals, you see food production
Right.
in the making, and the care and challenges of farming. I mean, I can still remember my dad watching a crop wither because we didn't get rainfall, and you understand how important drought is, or a crop being lost to insects or fungal diseases, and
Right.
without any ability to do it. So growing up on a farm was a big deal for me. I was probably one of those super weird kids. I knew from the time I can remember, my earliest memories, when I was 5 or 6 years old, I would be copying pictures out of the encyclopedia, or I'd be sneaking into my dad's workshop and taking things apart, and occasionally I'd get them back together again. But I always had this knowledge that I was going to be doing something,
Right.
Science or technically. And then, like a lot of people, I had a very impactful science teacher. In fact, I went to a really small school that had 18 kids in it, and I think I was the only kid in my physics, my biology, and my chemistry class. So, and I had the same teacher for all
For
three
all of them?
So
Yeah.
he was a big impact on me, and that was
Sure.
Mr. Gibson. And so I have a lot of respect for the impact that an educator or a mentor can have. And then, having the opportunity to go to college, be one of the first in the family to do that at University of Illinois, and you all notice the orange hats back there. Those are real, and those are hard earned.
Yes.
But after I graduated from Illinois, again, kind of things work out randomly.
Right.
I was going to do a postdoc. Originally, it was going to be in Buffalo, New York, but the professor called me and said, Rob, got bad news. I want to move the lab. And I go, where? And he goes, San Francisco. But the whole point of that was, I was at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, which was the epicenter where the whole biotechnology industry started. And Herb Boyer, who did the first recombinant experiment, and Howard Goodman and Bill Rutter, who started companies, were there. And it really showed me what technology could do to change an industry.
Right.
These guys helped create human insulin, which was the first biotech, the first GMO product.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so the challenge of how do you figure out how to do this in crops got lit for me, from that experience. And then, coming to Monsanto, seeing the teamwork, creating that environment, I look back and, sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're smart.
Right.
But what I know is, if you're surrounding yourself with good people, if you have a worthwhile goal, and if you have a path to get there, miracles can happen.
I like it, and what a better place to end. We've got just a couple minutes here. If you have a couple questions that you want to take the opportunity while we've got Robb Fraley here on Supper with Sean, by all means, shoot those to us. But
Sean, I missed the supper part. Like, what are you cooking tonight?
Well, I offered to buy supper, but I didn't bring it with me. Sorry.
Well, my daughter's just coming back from college tonight for spring break.
There you go. You better take her out.
I think I'm committed to a family dinner tonight.
I can't blame you.
Yeah.
You bet. So, we'll give it just another quick minute here. If you do have any questions, certainly this is your chance to ask. But appreciate you taking some time here tonight, Dr. Robb Fraley, for spending time talking about leadership and challenging change, because certainly you are what we should all try to imitate by way of your passion and your desire to help agriculture and what you've done for the industry. So on behalf of a lot of people watching, I know there are a lot of Monsanto and climate folks that are watching tonight.
Yep.
And certainly everything you do for agriculture for the advancement's sake. And as a farmer, I love the ability to eat sweet corn that has technology in it that's genetically modified. Any thoughts on how to develop into a successful leader?
A couple of things that I think are really key. So first of all, a lot of the advances that we see in science are when you bring different paradigms together and you're crossing different, industries and skill bases or tools. So I think the more leaders have different experiences, technology, commercial, regulatory, I think it helps focus the leadership a lot and have the impact. So I think multiple career experiences is a key thing. The other thing that I find is, being able to, and I talked about it earlier, being able to point to a vision, something that was really worthwhile, motivating people, getting people excited about, and it can't be a pipe dream, and there has to be a path there. But I think being able to articulate that vision, and that's something that, as I look back in my career, that's probably something that has really helped me, is being able to communicate and articulate that. And then I think the last thing I would just add into it is, and I notice it a lot, is that one of the things you run into when you do have an integrated team-based workforce is, you have a lot of processes, you have a lot of team things going on. It's still really important that you take the prudent risks.
Right.
And I think a big part of leadership is the comfort, not to take risks that are damaging, but risks that have been well thought out and where being successful makes a difference. So I put that high on the list for helping to drive innovation.
Absolutely. And one thing too here, there was a quick question on the next big evolution in ag, and you kind of hit on it, I think, and I'm a little biased to it, so I hope you answer it right.
Well, I think what's exciting to me, and I was just talking in North Dakota yesterday with a large group of farmers about some of the new exciting technologies that are coming. What I think is really unique about agriculture at this time is we're seeing an explosion of innovation. In the last 2 years, believe it or not, there's been over $10 billion of venture capital investment in the ag space. We're seeing hundreds of new biology-based startups and data science. And I think what's powerful is we're seeing, I would argue that the two greatest scientific advances in our lifetime, at least my lifetime, have been the advances of biology that take us to the gene, and now the basically the data science tools that let us digitize the farm. And there's explosive opportunity in both. I mean, I helped pioneer the GMO world. But now I look at what's happening with new advanced biotechnology tools like RNAi, like gene editing, being able to understand the soil microbiome. And so we've got incredible biological advances, and then your space with the ability to really understand the variability in the field, the environment, and the weather, and de-risk a lot of farmers' decisions and bring that information to an analytical base, I think is incredible. And so we're fortunate that these advances in biology and data science actually come together and integrate. And I think that's really, it's at that interface that the next big breakthroughs happen.
That's the pinnacle, right?
Yeah.
And the last question, since we talked about challenging change and leadership, there was a question about what advice do you have for a young leader?
I've hit on a couple of things, but I think that it all starts with flip the mindset around. You have to ask yourself, why does someone want to follow you?
I like that.
And for me, the answers that I've kind of come up with over the years is I look at people who I've followed. And I didn't mention it, but you asked me about life-changing events, and I talked about my high school mentor. For the last 20 years of his life, Norman Borlaug was a mentor of mine, and very special person.
Sure.
And what I saw in him were, the properties of, taking huge risk, pushing through barriers, always being focused on helping the farmer, and always understanding the importance that innovation, how it could change the lives of farmers around the world. And so for me, I look at a lot of what he did, and I think through myself, what does it take for people to follow me, or what will it take for people to follow a new leader? And I think it's being able to point to a direction that's worth going, to lay out a path that's clear enough that, even though it may be risky, there's a path to get there. And then I think, really importantly in that is building the trust and the comfort that people are better off going down that path and following you than somewhere else. And that a lot of that is the personal relationship, and a lot of that is I think founded in trust. And I think you bring those three elements together, and you at least give yourself the opportunity to move forward.
Yeah, sounds great. Well, again, thank you for what you do for agriculture as a whole and the leadership that you've provided to our industry, and thank you for taking time tonight on Supper with Sean. Thanks for all of you that joined tonight. Certainly feel free to retweet and share this. We'll share it out on Facebook and Twitter again, and YouTube as well. But again, Dr. Fraley, thank you so much for spending the time.
I still can't believe that people will come on and watch me do this.
Yeah,
so that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Thanks for you.
Absolutely. Have a good night, everybody, and be safe out there.
Bye-bye.